or should I stay
What's all this? You want to dice on
We don't think.
against it?
Yes, that would make me slightly stressed. So please don't do that.
No, of course. Yes, of course I will.
And it's got no amendments, so it's straightforward.
Oh, so even I can cope with that. That's
Well, hopefully.
excellent.
Thank
Is
you
there a
very
long
much.
list?
There are currently
No, there are
6.
only.
Are we expecting any?
Yes, I will do it. It is the second item.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
after
after the
foreign
amendments.
fighters. After foreign fighters. We will finish amendments to the foreign fighters
Yes.
amendments, and then it's mine.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good morning, dear colleagues. Please take your seats. I call the meeting of the General Committee on Political and Security Affairs, Security to order. Could I please also invite you to adopt the agenda? Are there any objections regarding the agenda? I take it everybody is content, so the agenda is adopted. Thank you. We will begin with the consideration of the amendments submitted to the draft resolution on the challenges related to returning and relocating foreign terrorist fighters. I will call the proposer of the amendment first, and then we'll call any opponent of the amendment. I will then ask the co-sponsor of the draft resolution, Mr. Hudson, for his opinion. I ask speakers to observe a time limit of 1 minute. Following that, I shall put the amendment to the vote. We will start with a vote on paragraph 1. There are no amendments tabled, so those in favor, please raise your cards. Raising, esa. So.
Yes. Ten.
Yeah.
Those against? Abstentions? So paragraph 1 is adopted with 22 in favor, 1 against, and no abstentions. If there are no objections with Amendment 1, this amendment has been withdrawn. Are there any objections regarding the withdrawal of the Amendment 1? No. There are no amendments to paragraph 2 to 7. We will take them together. Does anyone want a separate vote on any of these paragraphs? So we will, if there are no objections, we will take paragraphs 2 to 7 together. Those in favor?
Ten.
Those against? Abstentions? Paragraphs 2 to 7 have been approved with 32 in favor, 1 against, no abstentions. Dear colleagues, just a reminder that the speakers list for the remaining supplementary items, which we will debate after this supplementary item is closed, will be closed after we finish the debate of this resolution, about 10-15 minutes. Now I call Mr. Jabarov from the Russian Federation to propose Amendment 2.
Спасибо, уважаемая госпожа председатель. Мы предлагаем необходимым добавить в текст резолюции выражение нашей озабоченности распространением террористической идеологии, прежде всего таких организаций, как ИГИЛ, Аль-Каида, Фронт Ан-Нусры, их попытками постоянно расширять сферу своего присутствия, в том числе путем создания структур, занимающихся вербовкой боевиков-террористов. Спасибо.
Does anyone wish to speak against Amendment 2? What is Mr. Hudson's opinion of the amendment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I have expressed some very sharp differences and some criticisms of the policies of our friends from Russia, it's no surprise to anyone, but I do want to take this moment to say I appreciate our colleagues from Russia for their commitment to the OSCE EPA process, and particularly for their commitment on the CCT committee and these terrorism issues in general. And in the spirit of our former colleague, Mr. Koviev, who without his interest and continuing to push this issue, we wouldn't even have this committee. While I have some grave concerns that I expressed yesterday about overly broad terms like extremism, I also don't see a need to specifically list some terrorist groups, but however, in the spirit of cooperation, I'll be neutral on this amendment.
I shall now put Amendment 2 to the vote. Will all those in favor of Amendment 2 please raise your voting cards? Those against? Abstentions? Amendment 2 is approved with 31 in favor, 1 against, 17 abstentions. There are no amendments to paragraph 8 to 14. We will take them together. Does anyone want a separate vote on any of these paragraphs? Those in favor to take these paragraphs together? We are agreeing to these paragraphs. Those against? Abstentions? Paragraph 8 to 14 are agreed with 23 in favor, no one against, no abstentions. I call Mr. Aydin from Turkey to propose Amendment 3.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dear Madam Chair and the colleagues, We are talking about a universal vicious problem of terrorism. And in recent years, we have been witnessing that terrorism, which is encouraged and nurtured by the hate speeches against a particular culture, ideology, belief, or a group of people, as clearly seen in the manifestation of the serial killer in Christchurch, New Zealand, has got devilish power of changing form, space, and rhetoric very fast. In order to draw the attention of the public opinion to a new form of terrorism and hate speech, I wanted to add these two concepts in order to draw the attention of the public opinion. Thank you.
Does anyone wish to speak against Amendment 3? What is Mr. Hudson's opinion of the amendment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not taking a position on whether the added text is or is not factually correct. I just don't think that we should start spelling out individual groups facing persecution here. If we do so, we open ourselves to the question of what groups we're leaving out. Should we also not mention anti-Semitism or persecuted Christian minorities here, for example? I therefore oppose this amendment and encourage other delegates to do so as well.
I shall now put Amendment 3 to the vote. Will all those in favor of Amendment 3 please raise your voting cards? Against? Abstentions? Amendment 3 is defeated with 16 in favor, 33 against, and 1 abstention. We will now vote on the original paragraph 15. Those in favor, please raise your cards. Those against? Abstentions? Paragraph 15 is approved with 55 in favor, 1 against, and no abstentions. So there are no amendments to paragraphs 16 to 23. We will take them together. Does anyone want a separate vote on any of these paragraphs? So we will take paragraphs 16 to 23 together. Those in favor, please raise your card. Those against? Abstentions? Paragraphs 16 to 23 are approved with 59 in favor, no one against, and no abstentions. I call Mr. Tolstoy from the Russian Federation to propose Amendment 4. Mr. Slutsky.
Большое спасибо, госпожа председатель. Мы предлагаем в пункте 24 проекта резолюции необходимым добавить, что несмотря на ценность доказательств принадлежности того или иного физического лица к террористической деятельности, методы, способы, процедуры получения такой информации должны соответствовать правовым нормам и в первую очередь Уставу ООН. Мы считаем, что данное добавление улучшит и усилит пункт 24. Спасибо.
Does anyone wish to speak against Amendment 4? Norway.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Before becoming legislator, I had the pleasure of being in the police prosecution in the National Immigration Police. I also been a judge equivalent in a judge as a refugee court, asylum court, and I think all countries are given a margin to decide on their penal code system, both the penal code and penal code system procedures. Most of the OSCE countries are also bound by international regulations like European Human Rights Declaration. In Article 6, it states already that everybody has the right to a fair trial. But still, when this is said, I think the countries should still have the right to decide on their criminal procedural systems, and it should be up to the national judiciary system in the countries to rule on whether the trial is fair or not. Therefore, I suggest that we do not support this amendment. Thank you.
What is Mr. Hudson's opinion of the amendment?
Thank you, Chair. We see no need to expand the paragraph as suggested. The concept of admissibility of evidence before national courts is already covered in the existing paragraph. I would add that although I'm not a lawyer myself, I did consult with our legal experts who tell me that it is simply incorrect from a legal perspective that evidence would always have to be excluded from criminal trials under every type of failure to adhere to international law. I therefore urge my colleagues to vote against this amendment.
I shall now put Amendment 4 to the vote. Those in favor of Amendment 4, please raise your voting cards. Those against? Abstentions? Amendment 4 is defeated with 15 in favor, 44 against, and 1 abstention. Now we will vote. We will now vote on the original paragraph 24. Those in favor, please raise your cards. Against? Abstentions? Original paragraph 24 has been approved with 55 in favor, no one against, and no abstentions. There are no amendments to paragraph 25 to 45. We will take them together. Does anyone want a separate vote on either of these paragraphs? If so, we will take paragraphs 25 to 45 together. Those in favor, please raise your voting card. Those against? Abstentions? Paragraphs 25 to 45 have been approved with 60 in favor, no one against, and no abstentions. I call Mr. Rizhak from the Russian Federation to propose Amendment 5.
Уважаемая госпожа председатель, благодарю вас, уважаемые коллеги. Российская Федерация последовательно выступает за создание Международного антитеррористического фронта. В связи с этим создание общего банка имеет для нас принципиальное значение. В связи с этим пункт 46 считаем целесообразным дополнить. Призывает национальные органы власти развивать возможности сбора, обработки и анализа данных записей имен пассажиров в соответствии со стандартами и рекомендуемой практикой ИКАО и обеспечить, чтобы данные использовались и передавались всем соответствующим национальным органам при соблюдении требований резолюции Совета Безопасности ООН 2396 и при полном уважении прав человека и основных свобод в целях предотвращения, выявления и расследования террористических преступлений и связанных с ними поездок. Благодарю.
Does anyone wish to speak against Amendment 5? This is Mr. Hudson's opinion about this amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the Russian delegation reminding us of this important UN Security Council resolution, which is completely appropriate in this paragraph. I therefore support the amendment.
I shall now put Amendment 5 to the vote. Those in favor, please raise your voting cards. Those against? Any abstentions? The amendment is approved with 60 in favor, no one against, and 3 abstentions. Now we will vote no. Now we will move to paragraphs 47 to 56. They have no amendments. We will take them together. Does anyone want a separate vote on any of these paragraphs? So we will take paragraphs 47 to 56 together. Those in favor, please raise your cards. Against? Abstentions? Paragraphs 47 to 56 have been approved with 65 in favor, 1 against, and no abstentions. I propose that we now formally move to a vote on the draft resolution. Would those in favor of adopting the draft resolution please raise your voting cards? Those against? Abstentions? The draft resolution is agreed to with 70 in favor, no one against, and no abstentions. So if the committee is content, Lord Bowness from the United Kingdom to take the chair for consideration of the next supplementary item. I hope everybody is content as I'm going to present the supplementary item from Georgia. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for agreeing that I take the chair in the absence of Mr. Farrell, the rapporteur, and we move to consideration of the third supplementary item referred to this committee by the Standing Committee, namely the security and human rights situation in Abkhazia, Georgia, the Skin Valley region, South Ossetia, Georgia. There are no amendments, as you will have observed, so I will now give the floor to the principal sponsor of this item, Ms. Katasarava from Georgia. And Ms. Katasarava, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dear colleagues, I would like to introduce the supplementary item entitled Security and Human Rights Situation in Abkhazia, Georgia, and Tkhinvali region, South Ossetia, Georgia. In June, Tbilisi witnessed a massive wave of anti-occupation rallies in response to 3 decades of unresolved conflict, years of Russian occupation of Georgia's sovereign regions of Abkhazia and Tkhinvali, and hundreds of thousands of displaced persons still unable to return to their homes. One aspect that distinguished this demonstration from others is the prevailing voice of the youth. Majority of these protesters are young and extremely mature. Many of them may not remember the war, but they see and live with the consequences of war and foreign military occupation. Almost 3 decades have passed since the start of the conflict, which culminated in 2008 when the Russian Federation invaded Georgia and occupied its sovereign regions of Abkhazia and Tkhinvali, South Ossetia. Yet no result has been achieved in terms of its resolution. Russia remains in breach of every provision of the EU-mediated 12 August 2008 ceasefire agreement, while the EU monitoring mission is the only monitoring mechanism on the ground, yet unable to implement its mandate in full due to denied access to Georgia's occupied regions. There is an urgent need for the creation of international security and human rights mechanisms on the ground. Today I take this floor to speak for those who haven't continued to suffer the consequences of the war and appeal to this chamber to stand together and find a solution to the underlying problem. Hundreds of thousands of people expelled from their homes in Abkhazia and Tkhinvali regions live in protracted displacement for over 2 decades, and those residing in the occupied territories live in constant discrimination on ethnic grounds. Human rights violations on the occupied territories have become a regular phenomenon. Brutal killings of Georgian citizens by representatives of the occupation regimes in Sukhumi and Tkhinvali, and deaths of detained Georgian IDP at the Russian military base illegally stationed in the occupied Abkhazia is the testament of the systematic nature of human rights violations and discrimination in the occupied territories against Georgian citizens. I would like to remind the Assembly that over the recent years, this very chamber has adopted a number of very strong worded resolutions, declarations and political decisions. These documents reaffirm the territorial integrity and sovereignty of my country, condemn Russian occupation, call for fulfillment of August 12, 2008 ceasefire agreements, underline the importance of the Geneva international discussions, call for safe and dignified return of hundreds of thousands of IDPs and refugees, forcible displacement from their homes in Georgia's Abkhazia and Tkhinvali regions, condemned human rights violations, including killings of Georgian citizens in the occupied territories and so on. Unfortunately, the list is long. This draft proposal strongly stands for all the above principles. Dear colleagues, no matter how difficult it is to overcome decades of divergence and numerous grievances on both parts, it is our obligation to find avenues for the peaceful resolution of the Russia-Georgia conflict in line with the international law and Helsinki principles. The purpose of this draft is not just a reminder of the consequences of conflict, but it also offers solutions. The government of Georgia is strongly committed to the policy of peaceful conflict resolution, directed towards the deoccupation of Georgian regions on the one hand, and reconciliation and confidence building between the communities divided by occupation lines on the other. It was with this spirit that my government pursues and strongly supports the peace initiative, a step to a better future, aimed at improving the humanitarian and socio-economic conditions of people residing in Abkhazia and Tskhinvali region, as well as fostering people-to-people contacts and confidence building between the divided communities. It is with such forward-looking initiatives that we seek a way ahead, and we need strong support of the international community in our pursuit to the peaceful resolution of the conflict. Thereby, I would like to once again encourage my colleagues in this room to support this important draft resolution and thank all of you for your support to Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kasarava. May I just advise all members that the speakers' lists are now closed. The time limit for speeches will be 2 minutes. The first speaker will be Mr. Chubarov from the Ukraine, followed by Mr. Pritchard of the United Kingdom. Mr. Chubarov, you have the floor.
Уважаемый господин председатель, уважаемые коллеги, в предыдущих выступлениях я уже говорил о том, что если бы в августе 2008 года агрессия Российской Федерации против суверенной Грузии получила бы достойный международный отпор, в том числе возможностями и полномочиями нашей организации, то наши страны и мир в целом избежали бы последующих политических кризисов, вызванных вторжением в 2014 году российских войск на территорию суверенной Украины, оккупацией Крыма и попыткой его аннексии, развязанием военных действий на востоке Украины. Но самое главное, мы избежали бы смертей более 13 тысяч граждан Украины, не отдали бы в заложники российским оккупантам крымско-татарский народ, коренной народ Крыма, не сделали бы беженцами миллионы людей, жителей территории Украины, где при поддержке России развязана война. Что касается проекта резолюции, нам в Украине, особенно во временно оккупированном Крыму и на территории отдельных районов Донецкой и Луганской областей, эти проблемы не просто известны. Миллионы жителей Украины живут в условиях постоянной опасности для своих жизней и прав и свобод. В нашем случае на территории оккупированного Крыма преступление против прав и свобод человека совершается непосредственно российской оккупационной администрацией. Приведу в качестве примера циничного нарушения прав человека в Крыму лишь один случай. 11 июля, через несколько дней, в Верховном суде Российской Федерации состоится судебное заседание по рассмотрению апелляционной жалобы в отношении 4 граждан Украины, крымских татар: Мамутова Энвера, Меметова Ремзи, Апсиитова Зеври, Абельтарова Рустема. Суммарно их приговорили к 44 годам лишения свободы. Их обвиняют по статье терроризм и насильственный захват власти. Государство-оккупант, захватившее нашу землю, сделавшее заложниками граждан Украины, обвиняет граждан Украины в том, что они якобы готовят насильственный захват власти в России. Уважаемые коллеги, мы призываем всех поддержать резолюцию, подготовленную грузинской делегацией, поддержать хотя бы для того, чтобы эти проблемы не оказались по вине Российской Федерации на ваших территориях.
Thank you very much. I would ask people to observe the time limit that's been imposed if everybody is going to have the opportunity of speaking on the various items before the committee. I'm now going to call Mr. Pritchard from the United Kingdom, and after that I will call Mr. Vladimir Zabarov of the Russian Federation. Mr. Pritchard, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're all very busy parliamentarians, and whilst it's absolutely right that in our legislators we recognize and identify and call out the Russian occupation of Ukraine, so often we forget the Russian occupation of Georgia. So I'm very glad that this is on the agenda today. But can I encourage all of my OSCE colleagues to go back to their respective parliaments, and when they discuss Ukraine and its occupation, also remember Georgia. And the United Kingdom, let's be absolutely clear, supports the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Georgia and does not recognize, and in fact only 5 countries recognize, and President Assad and Syria being one of them, which I think speaks for itself, only 5 countries recognize the independence of South Ossetia and Abkhazia. And I'm very concerned about the human rights situation on the ground in South Ossetia and Abkhazia. It is getting worse, it is not getting better. And as we've just heard, the internally displaced people and the consequences of thousands of those people having been forcibly removed out of their long-held houses and where families have had ties for many generations is having a huge humanitarian consequence on the whole of Georgia, just not the 2 areas that we're discussing today. And of course, those humanitarian impacts include the freedom of movement, people able to go and visit families, the borderization and the creeping borderization by Russia in that region. Also, we're seeing a huge impact on the Georgian Orthodox Church, people not being able to access churches, the clergy not being able to access churches, and of course there is a distinction between the Georgian Orthodox Church and the Russian Orthodox Church. And if the cameraman could move slightly away, I'd be grateful so I can see the clock. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, let's be absolutely clear here. There are illegal detentions in South Ossetia. There is torture. There are deaths in custody. And these cases need to be investigated by the international community. And this torture, these illegal detentions, need to cease immediately. Russia has just rejoined the Council of Europe. It
Mr.
pretends...
Pritchard, please, I would be grateful if you could bring it to a conclusion.
Thank you. I'm about to do that. The United Kingdom calls upon Russia to be a responsible international actor, to withdraw from South Ossetia and Abkhazia, and to get serious about peace building and allowing these people to live in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pritchard. I'm now going to call Mr. Vladimir Zabarov from the Russian Federation, and after him I will call Madam Irakli Bararia from Georgia.
Спасибо, господин председатель. Россия признала Абхазию и Южную Осетию на основе свободного волеизъявления абхазского и юго-осетинского народов, руководствуясь положениями Устава ООН, Декларации ООН 70-го года о принципах международного права, касающихся дружественных отношений между государствами, а также Хельсинским заключительным актом СБСЕ 1975 года и другими основополагающими международными документами. Нападение режима Саакашвили на Южную Осетию в августе 2008 года, убийство российских миротворцев, подготовка аналогичной акции против Абхазии стали кульминацией многолетней насильственной политики Тбилиси в отношении этих малых народов и не оставили республикам иного выбора, кроме обеспечения своей безопасности и права на существование через самоопределение в качестве независимых государств. Ситуация с безопасностью в Абхазии, Грузии и Южной Осетии обсуждается в рамках женевских дискуссий по безопасности и стабильности в Закавказье. Однозначно можно сказать, что и Абхазия, и Южная Осетия состоялись как суверенные государства. Обе республики обладают всеми атрибутами государственности, включая эффективно действующие системы органов законодательной, исполнительной и судебной власти, контролируют свою территорию, развивают национальную экономику, культуру, активно занимаются строительством правового общества. Следует учитывать и неоднократное волеизъявление населения этих стран в рамках общепризнанных демократических процедур голосования при участии международных наблюдателей. Признание независимости Абхазии и Южной Осетии мы никому не навязываем, однако хотели бы рассчитывать на то, что наши международные партнеры проявят к связанным в Закавказье вопросам объективный и непредвзятый подход, опирающийся на существующие там реалии. Спасибо.
Thank you very much indeed. And as I say, I now call Madam Irakli Bararia from Georgia, and after her I will call Mr. Slutsky of the Russian Federation. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. Distinguished delegates, this is not the first time that this committee and the Assembly are discussing the draft resolution on the Georgian occupied territories, which demonstrates your firm support to sovereignty and territorial integrity of Georgia. On the other hand, that the resolution is on the agenda means that the infringement of Georgia's territorial integrity through the Russian occupation still persists. Russia not only fails to fulfill the obligations under EU-mediated ceasefire agreement, but through its aggressive actions further deteriorates situation on the ground and makes factual steps towards their annexation. Stationing 10,000 Russian troops, offensive military equipment, and Russian military drills do pose a very serious threat to the wider region. As we speak here today, the illegal process of borderization, dividing communities and families, still take place. Killings, kidnappings, torture, inhuman and degrading treatment, other ethnically motivated violence, deprivation of the freedom of movement, property, access to education and medical treatment are daily practice and go unpunished, which is the direct responsibility of the Russian Federation. This resolution, as many previous documents of this Assembly did, clearly describes grave human rights and security situation on the ground and serves as the firm position of this forum to remind Russia that there is 21st century outside and that grappling territories of sovereign states will not be tolerated, and that we will never reconcile ourselves to forcefully changing internationally recognized borders. This is a document where the loss and pain, strength and optimism, and importantly, the hope of our citizens, as well as solidarity and support from our OSCE member states, are voiced and translated into particular provisions. The citizens of Georgia, IDPs, and especially those living on the other side of the occupational line, await and have no doubt, just if you could add 10 more seconds, please, have no doubt that this Assembly will respond to their legitimate concerns and aggressive actions clearly and with a straightforward manner, and this resolution will receive full support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Barrera, I apologize for the fact that I addressed you incorrectly. I had some false information put in front of me, for which I apologize. May I now call Mr. Slutsky of the Russian Federation, and after him I will call Ms. Margareta Sederfeld from Sweden. Mr. Slutsky, please.
Спасибо, господин председатель. Неблагодарная задача выступать по тематике, где большинство в зале занимает другую позицию, нежели наша делегация. Но в очередной раз хочу обратить, во-первых, внимание коллеги Причарда из Соединенного Королевства, что Foreign Office, видимо, подготовил вам необъективную справку. Общение между Русской Православной Церковью и Грузинской Церковью продолжается самым тесным образом. Что касается ситуации в целом, в очередной раз хочу призвать нас всех задуматься, кто мы и как мы относимся к статье 1 Устава Организации Объединенных Наций, где закреплено право народов на самоопределение, распоряжаться своей судьбой. И то, что в данном случае Южная Осетия и Абхазия приняли решение о том, что далее они будут самостоятельными государствами, связано только с одним. центробежный режим, созданный режимом Шеварднадзе и затем режимом Саакашвили. Долгие годы население этих территорий унижалось, подвергалось различного рода издевательствам самым масштабным образом. На эту тему есть сотни и тысячи примеров, закрепленные в том числе и в выводах международных организаций. Когда в 2008 году, грубейшим образом нарушив олимпийское перемирие, Михаил Николаевич Саакашвили, тогдашний президент Грузии, напал на Цхинвал, столицу Южной Осетии, были убиты женщины, дети, старики, российские миротворцы. Вот что послужило каплей, переполнившей чашу терпения и подтолкнувшей руководство этих территорий, народы Южной Осетии и Абхазии принять решение о самоопределении в полном соответствии со статьей 1 Устава Организации Объединенных Наций. Поэтому я просил бы коллег не вводить в заблуждение парламентскую ассамблею. Да, дорогая госпожа Кацарава, нам необходимо решать эту проблему. Нам необходимо проводить семинары, конференции, нам необходимо исходить из реальной ситуации. Нам необходимо слушать население самой Южной Осетии и самой Абхазии. Большое спасибо, и я хочу призвать Ассамблею к здравому смыслу в этом очень и очень чувствительном досье. Спасибо.
I'm now going to call Ms. Margareta Sederfeld from Sweden and be followed by Mr. Onishenko from the Russian Federation, who will be the last speaker on the list. Madam Sederfeld.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Delegates, I will first start to thank Ms. Katsarava for this important supplementary item. The security and human rights situation in Abkhazia, Georgia, and in the Chinchi Valley region is really an important issue. It shows that human rights and security goes hand in hand. It shows that the OSCE Parliamentarian Assembly is important. We can do a lot to improve the situation for the Georgian people who live in this region. First of all, to recognize the international decided border, recognized border. It's one important step. Then there is a huge possibility for Russia, if they really wants to contribute to peaceful solution, as they stress here, is to admit that the OSCE and UN mission get access to the occupied regions, because this is a tool for OSCE to let our missions to have access to the area, just as in Ukraine, in the Donetsk, Luhansk. Let's do the same here. And I also would like to underline here that in OSCE we have a special representative on mediation. Let's call him. Let's call our President Emeritus, who is the special representative of mediating, to act, because it's our duties as parliamentarians elected in OSCE PA Assembly, to really support a peaceful solution. And that's what is in this draft resolution. So I stand behind it, and I really hope it will be a positive result on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Sederfeld. And I now call Mr. Onishenko from the Russian Federation, who will be the last speaker.
Выступаю, господин председатель, вместо Онищенко, господин Рыжак. Я хотел бы сказать и возвратить всех присутствующих к тем моментам, которые явились спусковым крючком для этого трагического инцидента. Я еще раз хочу присоединиться к выступлению своего коллеги, господина Слуцкого, который сказал, что именно в ночью по-бандитски тысячи залпов открыли огонь по столицам, населенным пунктам с многострадальной земли Южной Осетии. Погибли люди, погибло огромное число наших миротворцев, которые выступали и реализовывали свои функции в соответствии с мандатом ООН. Это было грубейшее преступление, уже которое касалось международного характера. Напомню, что при посредничестве тогдашнего президента Франции Саркози Россия вынуждена была защитить этих граждан и провести операцию принуждению Грузии к миру. В 40 километрах от столицы российские войска были остановлены, когда уже президент бежал со своей столицы. Грузинский народ должен нам быть благодарен за то, что мы не допустили истребления уже грузинского народа. Вы понимаете, что могло твориться там? Могла бы начаться гражданская братоубийственная война. Россия выступила как миротворец, защитила обе стороны конфликта. И сейчас она вынуждена слушать вот эти необоснованные, беспочвенные обвинения в свой адрес. Поэтому я призываю нас, давайте беспристрастно, с холодной головой еще раз обсудим все детали этого конфликта и все сделаем то, чтобы народы жили в этой многострадальной стране в мире и благополучии. Благодарю за внимание.
Thank you very much indeed, and I know there may be other people who wish to speak, but we have closed the list and said that this, and already announced that the speakers list was closed. So in fairness to everybody, I am going to adhere to that decision and that announcement. Now, there are no amendments to paragraphs 1 to 26. I propose that we should take them together unless any members wish to take a separate vote on a particular paragraph. Is there agreement and no objection to taking the paragraphs together? There's no objection to that? Well, in that case, we can actually move directly to the a vote on the draft resolution. And would those in favour of the draft resolution please raise their voting cards now? Thank you. Anybody against? Please raise their cards now. Those against? Over there. All done? Thank you very much. Are there any abstentions? Abstentions here. Thank you very much. The voting is as follows. Those in favour of the draft resolution, 50. Those against, 5. And 9 abstentions. And the resolution is therefore adopted. Thank you very much indeed for your help and cooperation. And I will now hand the chair back to the Madam Katasarava. All right. Away you go.
Before we move to our next supplementary item, I would like to thank all of you for supporting us. I very much appreciate it on behalf of the whole Parliament, on behalf of the whole country. So now we move to the consideration of the fourth supplementary item referred to us by the Standing Committee, Energy Security in the OSCE area. There are 3 amendments to this item. I give the floor to Ms. Miliuta from Lithuania, the sponsor of this draft resolution. Ms. Miliuta, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, dear fellow colleagues. Thank you for the opportunity to present the draft resolution on energy security in the OSCE area. Not only is energy vital for economic growth, but there is also a direct link between energy security, stability, and security within and between states. Clearly, it has become an important part of national security too. In this draft resolution, we speak for fair competition in energy markets, but it is only possible if all suppliers are subject to the same requirements. Suppliers violating international conventions and not complying with universally accepted requirements would gain an unfair advantage if they were granted with unconditional access to energy markets. Fair competition cannot be guaranteed if not all suppliers are meeting the highest standards of public safety. This resolution also emphasizes the importance of diversification of energy sources, suppliers, and routes to avoid creating conditions for potential abuse in the energy market. It calls for promotion and facilitation of dialogue between energy importing, exporting, and transit countries to strengthen security of all participating countries and their energy needs. This draft resolution encourages us, participating states, to demonstrate a clear commitment towards greater security and solidarity by respecting the principles of fair, transparent, and open energy markets. Also, it emphasizes the need to follow international environmental and safety laws on energy projects, which is crucial for the whole OSCE area. And we, the OSCE community, play an important role here. All in all, I kindly ask you to support the supplementary item, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you. The floor is now open for debate. The time limit for speeches is 2 minutes. The first speaker on our list is Mr. Aldag from Canada, followed by Ms. Belkova from Ukraine.
Good morning. I'd like to begin by thanking Ms. Miliute for her supplementary item on energy security in the OSCE area. I fully concur with its vision, namely that energy security is an ongoing priority that must be discussed at the OSCE. The supplementary item that I put forward in Committee 2 also emphasizes the importance of energy security, but specifically focuses on sustainable energy as a means to achieving energy security. I want to emphasize that these items complement each other while addressing distinct priorities, both of which are important for the OSCE region. This item on energy security in the OSCE emphasizes the need to diversify energy sources to avoid dependency, which is a serious risk for a number of participating states. By diversifying energy sources through investments in renewable and sustainable energy, we diminish reliance on one single energy source, which can leave states vulnerable to coercion. It's my view that we should strive to develop policies that foster an environment where clean, low-carbon energy technologies can be developed and where companies within the private and public sectors that build these innovations can compete with traditional energy sources. As we look to diversify energy sources, we must be mindful of the safety concerns relating to some forms of energy generation. This item specifically recognizes that environmental and nuclear safety standards must be upheld when exploring various energy sources, which is important. People and societies can prosper and thrive when they have access to reliable energy sources without fear that their energy needs will be used to force them to make economic and political decisions they might not have made otherwise. Therefore, I lend my support to this item. Thank you.
The next speaker on the list is Ms. Belkova from Ukraine, followed by Mr. Svensson from Iceland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dear colleagues, today we discuss this wonderful text on energy security, but in reality, we really debate whether OSCE as an organization should look at energy as another dimension of the existing or potential conflicts. I represent Ukraine, which is now a major transit energy country for Europe. 1/3 of the overall supply of natural gas coming to EU is coming from Russia and via Ukraine. Our system was built to transport at least 145 BCM of gas, being the largest existing pipeline system for gas supply. For Ukraine, natural gas is also one of the most important primary sources of energy. The current gas transmission system serves not only as an economic tool for the country, but it is also a unique protection against further Russian aggression, which was discussed so large at this forum during the last days against Ukraine. Unfortunately, we see how some countries in Europe are being naive in appeasing the bear and supporting abandonment of the Ukrainian route. They insist on construction of the Nord Stream 2 project, regardless of the voices coming from their own countries, Central Eastern Europe, or our leaders. Despite numerous provocations by Russia, Ukraine has been ensuring a reliable and stable gas transit via its gas transportation system for the last 5 years. Acts of military aggression by Russian Federation against Ukraine in the Black Sea and in the Kerch Strait is a good example of how Russia will increase its military presence and conduct operations in Baltic Sea once the Nord Stream 2 is being built. My dear European colleagues, winter is coming. And this time, it's not an exciting movie, though the threat is equally scary. Russia is currently using all possible ways not to sign a new transit agreement with Ukraine. But Nord Stream 2 will not be in place as of beginning of 2020. As serious politicians, we should prepare, and we welcome this resolution as one step ahead to be ready to be energy security ready. Thank you so much for your attention.
The next speaker is Mr. Svansson from Iceland.
Madam Chair, when we talk about energy security, we have to remember that part of our world is without any stationary energy, and most countries depend on import of energy. Energy security is a worldwide issue because access to energy is one of the driving forces for development. Some of us will go back home after this meeting, knowing that our homes and industries have access to energy from sustainable resources, but others do not. I understand the need for energy security in Europe and the need for some governance in the energy market. At the same time, I cannot support plans that make states obligated to utilize natural resources to sell, transfer, and price energy built on centralized decisions. We might be able to make some framework for the energy market, but it is important to respect the right of nations to control and utilize their own resources. Most, if not all of us, have been to conferences and high-level meetings on climate change and understand the need for more green and sustainable energy. We have come together to discuss this issue in Paris, New York, and in fact all over the world. The access for entrepreneurs, scientists, and others to funding for research and development has been limited, but it has been changing slowly. At the same time that we have trouble funding development and sustainable energy resources, world leaders globally spend $5.2 trillion on subsidizing fossil fuels. Madam Chair, $5.2 trillion. This number stems from 2017 assessment by the IMF and amounts to 6.4% of all of the global gross domestic product. Mr. President, dear colleagues, we urgently need to transfer a small amount, just a small amount of this money to the green energy sector. I urge you, dear colleagues, to do everything in your power to encourage the development of sustainable energy resources. Thank you.
We will now move to consideration of the amendments submitted to the draft resolution. We have 3 amendments in total. Copies of the amendments have been made available. I will call the proposer of the amendment first, and then we will call any opponent of the amendment. I will then ask the sponsor of the draft resolution, Ms. Miliute, for her opinion. I ask speakers to observe a time limit of 1 minute. As a reminder, following that, I shall put the amendment to the vote. Paragraph 1 to 5, we will start with these paragraphs. There are no amendments to these paragraphs. We will take them together. Does anyone want a separate vote on either of these paragraphs? No. So we will take paragraphs 1 to 5 together. We do not need to vote. We do still. Those in favor to take paragraphs together? Those in favor of paragraphs 1 to 5? Against? Abstentions? Paragraphs 1 to 5 are agreed with 43 in favor, no one against, and 1 abstention. I call Mr. Zeldin from the United States to propose Amendment 1.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Energy security is a topic of great importance across the whole OSCE region. An amendment Congressman Hudson has introduced to this resolution that we will soon consider calls for energy diversification. Nord Stream 2 goes the opposite direction, increasing dependency on a single source. Economic dependency has a political impact. Friends in Eastern and Central Europe could be negatively impacted. It will likely lead to more corruption and instability across the region. And as the Ukrainian delegation has so eloquently asserted, there are numerous unintended consequences with moving forward with the project. TurkStream is similar in nature, a project that looks to increase Russia's energy leverage over other countries and can be tapped to exert malign influence. Simply put, we cannot allow Russia to dramatically increase its stranglehold on European energy. We must look for alternatives and make sure our democratic institutions cannot be held hostage over energy supply as Nord Stream 2 and TurkStream would promote. I encourage all my colleagues to support this amendment.
Does anyone wish to speak against Amendment 1? Turkey, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We think that naming and blaming particular energy cooperation projects through some assumptions on their potential for some sort of coercion is not in line with the main goal of this forum. I find such assumption on TurkStream pipeline project stated in this amendment totally ungrounded and false. Diversification of energy resources and routes with a view to ensuring energy supply security constitutes an important element of Turkish energy strategy. The first line of the TurkStream project will be supplying gas to the Turkish market. Our intention is to have direct access to the gas we currently purchase. The second line of the TurkStream, on the other hand, will depend on the demand from European countries. The talks are currently underway between the relevant parties. I believe that respective European countries should be free to choose whether they want to join TurkStream project or not. Thank you very much.
What is Ms. Miliuta's opinion of the amendment?
I agree with the amendment.
I shall now put Amendment 1 to the vote. Will those in favor of Amendment 1 please raise your voting card? Those against? Abstentions? Amendment 1 is agreed with 27 in favor, 6 against, and 9 abstentions. There are no amendments to paragraphs 6 to 13. We will take them together if there are no objections. So we are taking these paragraphs together. Those in favor, please raise your cards. Those against? Any abstentions? Paragraph 6 to 13 have been approved with 42 in favor, no one against, and 1 abstention. I call Mr. Graves from the United States to propose Amendment 2.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we have already heard, energy security is certainly a great topic of importance across this entire region. The continuous availability of energy is the cornerstone of economic viability in all of our societies. The way in which we choose to manage our energy resources has widespread consequences for everyone. We strongly encourage participating states to make efforts to diversify their supply sources and export markets. Diversification is a direct source of energy security for each of us. Diversification injects free market forces into our regions that might otherwise be subject to a monopoly. This means that diversification leads to a better deal for the buyers and each of the consumers. Diversification also lessens vulnerability to the use of energy as a geopolitical tool. By having multiple sources, the loss of one source can be more easily tolerated. Exporters win as well with diversification, since they have more markets, which means more buyers for their product. So if the goal of an enterprise is to earn a profit, more buyers and customers should always be welcome. I want to thank the Chair and encourage all the members to support energy diversification and expanding energy supplies across the entire region. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Does anyone wish to speak against Amendment 2? What's Ms. Miliuta's opinion of the amendment?
I support this amendment.
I shall now put Amendment 2 to the vote. Will those in favor of Amendment 2 please raise your voting cards? Those against? Any abstention? Amendment 2 has been approved with 41 in favor, 0 against, and 4 abstentions. We will now vote on paragraph 14. Those in favor, please raise your cards. This paragraph is unamended. Those against? Abstentions? Paragraph 14 is approved with 37 in favor, no one against, and 1 abstention. I now call Mr. Duncan from the United States to propose Amendment 3.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me remind my colleagues in this assembly that there is no real security without energy security. Russia and other countries, both inside and outside the OSCE region, continue to engage in pipeline politics. The use of energy resources to exert influence and achieve foreign policy goals that have nothing to do with the buying and selling of energy. This behavior not only distorts markets that would otherwise be efficient and provide for the energy needs of all countries at a reasonable price, but it is squarely against commitments made in the Helsinki Final Act. It also exacerbates corruption in the region as price gaps are exploited through graft to create fortunes from fraud. I strongly encourage all participating states to band together and reject the political exploitation of energy resources and insist on true market for energy, one where supply and demand reign, not the whims of a handful of oligarchs. With that, I yield back. Thank you very much.
Does anyone wish to speak against this amendment? What is Ms. Miliuta's opinion of the amendment?
I support.
I shall now put Amendment 3 to the vote. Those in favor of Amendment 3, please raise your voting card. Those against? Abstentions? Amendment 3 is approved with 41 in favor, no one against, and 3 abstentions. There are no amendments to paragraph 15 to 17. We will take them together if there are no objections. So those in favor to take paragraphs 15 to 17 together, please raise your... Those in favor to, who agree to take these paragraphs, please raise your cards. We are grouping it. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Paragraphs 15 to 17 have been agreed with 38 in favor, no one against, and 2 abstentions. That concludes the consideration of amendments. Thank you very much. I propose that we now formally move to a vote on the draft resolution. Would those in favor of adopting the draft resolution as amended please raise their voting cards? Those against? Any abstentions? So draft resolution is approved with 39 in favor, 6 against, and 1 abstention. Now move to consideration of the 5th and final supplementary item referred to as by the Standing Committee good practices for states related to private military and security companies. There is 1 amendment to this item. I give the floor to Mr. Hilptold from Switzerland, the sponsor of this draft resolution. Mr. Hilptold, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Merci Madame la Présidente, Madame la Rapporteure, mes chers collègues. Depuis la fin de la guerre froide, le marché des entreprises militaires et de sécurité privée ne cesse de croître. C'est toutefois pendant les conflits en Irak et en Afghanistan que celles-ci ont commencé à faire parler d'elles. En effet, plusieurs incidents ont soulevé la question de leur légitimité à intervenir en zone de conflit, de leur responsabilité et de la régulation de leurs activités. Celle-ci semblait alors opérer dans une sorte de vide juridique. Grâce à une initiative conjointe de la Suisse et du CICR, un dialogue international a été initié afin de clarifier comment le droit international s'applique aux activités des entreprises militaires et de sécurité privée opérant en zone de conflit armé. Ces échanges ont abouti au document de Montreux, lequel rappelle les obligations juridiques pertinentes, notamment en matière de droit international humanitaire et de droits de l'homme qui incombent aux États, aux entreprises militaires et de sécurité privée et enfin à leur personnel. Sans créer de nouvelles obligations, le document de Montreux identifie des bonnes pratiques concernant la réglementation des activités des entreprises militaires et de sécurité privée pouvant aider les États à prendre les mesures nationales nécessaires pour mettre en œuvre leurs obligations internationales existantes. Sur la base du document de Montreux a été lancé en 2010 le Code international de conduite des entreprises de sécurité privée, une initiative multi-acteurs conduite par la Suisse avec la participation de gouvernements d'une part, des entreprises de sécurité privée et sociétés civiles d'autre part. Le Code dispose d'un mécanisme de contrôle et monitorage. La loi fédérale sur les prestations de sécurité privée fournies à l'étranger, en vigueur en Suisse depuis 2015, exige des entreprises privées qui y sont soumises à adhérer au Code de conduite. À l'avenir, les États continueront à faire appel à ces sociétés privées, lesquelles font désormais partie de l'architecture sécuritaire dans la zone de l'OSCE. Il est toutefois de la responsabilité des États de veiller à ce que celles-ci n'enfreignent pas les règles applicables aux autorités publiques et, par conséquent, de mettre en place des systèmes étroits de surveillance de ce secteur. C'est le sens de cette proposition compris dans ce point additionnel. Je vous remercie pour votre attention.
The floor is now open for debate. The time limit for speeches is 2 minutes. We've got one speaker on the list, Mr. Vysotsky from Ukraine. Please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I stated yesterday, the problem is that we see the private military companies at the OC region and in other regions as Syria, as Africa, as state agents that provide cover-up for the state interests and for the state activities for empowering the politics of certain states in these regions. This proxy usage of private military companies needs to be accountable. In Donbass, in occupied territories at the line of engagement in Ukraine, we see this methodology from the Russian Federation when so-called volunteer groups and Russian private military companies, which really contain the Russian special forces and soldiers from the special forces are conducting special operations without any official connection to the Russia itself. We see the situation in Syria, we see the situation in Africa when 3 journalists were killed allegedly by the Wagner private military Russian company. So we think that we have to be more specific and more attentive to these problems. The authoritarian regimes will be using this kind of tool to promote their interest all over the world, and they are doing now. Thank you.
We will now move to consideration of the amendments submitted to the draft resolution. We have only one amendment, and as per procedure, we will first call the proposer of an amendment, and then we'll call a single opponent of that amendment. I will then ask the sponsor of the draft resolution for his opinion. The limit is 1 minute, as you know. We will start with paragraphs 1 to 10. There are no amendments to these paragraphs. We will take them together. Does anyone want a separate vote on either of these paragraphs? In which case, we will take paragraphs 1 to 10 together. Those in favor, please raise your cards. Against? Any abstentions? Paragraphs 1 to 10 are agreed with 35 in favor, no one against, and 1 abstention. I call Mr. Gerasimov from Ukraine to propose Amendment 1.
Madam Chair, it will be Mr. Vysotsky here. Yeah, again, thank you. So as I stated just a few minutes ago, we basically, when we see the private military companies as a tool for empowering state interest in some conflict regions, we are proposing to add a new paragraph after the paragraph 10 to express our concern about the role of private military companies in the escalating conflicts in the OSCE area. We see this in Ukraine, in some other states, and Balkans. We saw this situation. So please, I want to ask you to vote in favor of this amendment. Thank you.
What is Mr. Hildpolt's opinion? Does anyone wish to speak against Amendment 1? Sorry. What is Mr. Hildpolt's opinion of the amendment?
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Je soutiens la proposition de cet amendement.
I shall now put Amendment 1 to the vote. Will those in favor of Amendment 1 please raise your voting cards? Those against? Any abstentions? Amendment 1 is agreed with 14 in favor, 5 against, and no abstentions. There are no amendments to paragraphs 11 to 17. We will take them together if there are no objections. So we will take paragraphs 11 to 17 together. Those in favor, please raise your cards. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Paragraphs 11 to 17 are approved with 37 in favor, no one against, and 1 abstention. This concludes the consideration of amendments. I propose that we now formally move to a vote on the draft resolution as amended. Would those in favor of adopting the draft resolution please raise your voting cards as amended? Anyone against? Abstentions? Draft resolution is adopted with 39 in favor, no one against, and 6 abstentions. We now come to the election of the committee officers for the 29th annual session of this assembly. Nominations were closed at 9 a.m. this morning. The International Secretariat informs me that the following nominations have been received in the table office. For the chair, Mr. Filippo Lombardi from Switzerland, who was unable to be present at this assembly, as you all know. For the Vice Chair, Mr. Costel Dunava from Romania. And Mr. Laurinas Kastiunas from Lithuania for the position of the rapporteur. Could you also, yeah, thank you. As the position of the chair of the committee is not contested, I declare that the nominee for that position, Mr. Filippo Lombardi from Switzerland, is elected by acclamation in accordance with Rule 36. We, of course, thank him for all his contribution and the work for this committee. And Mr. Grimaldi would like to say a few words if he's in the room.
Sì, grazie Presidente. Volevo soltanto esprimere la mia soddisfazione per questo ufficio di Presidenza. Penso che dispiace a tutti per quello che è successo all'amico Filippo Lombardi, visto il lutto che ha avuto nella sua famiglia. Al contempo siamo soddisfatti di questa Presidenza perché penso che chiunque di noi abbia consapevolezza dell'impegno, la dedizione, la disponibilità dell'amico Filippo, non soltanto in questa Commissione ma anche nella Commissione che si occupa della Via della Seta, e quindi una persona assolutamente disponibile che è ben rappresentativo della nostra attività e per il quale insomma merita il nostro applauso e il nostro supporto nonostante il momento difficile di carattere personale. Grazie.
Of course, fully agree with our colleague, Mr. Grimaldi, and joining his words of appreciation. Mr. Azaigulia would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to express my support to the candidacy of all three that have been mentioned here, particularly to the Filippo Lombardi. He is one of the prominent members of our Assembly. He has been serving for many years. I agree with my colleague from Italy, and really he now experiencing very, very sensitive and a very hard time. And of course, I think he is very active, not only in the committee as well as in other assemblies duties. Particularly, I would say that he has been open always for the initiatives and for new ideas coming from different assemblies representatives. So I think we have to support his candidacy. Thank you.
Thank you. And likewise, as the position of the Vice Chair is not contested, I declare that the nominee for that position, Mr. Costel Dunava from Romania, is elected by acclamation. Would you like to say a few words, Mr. Dunava?
Thank you. Dear colleagues, dear friends, this is my third participation at an annual session. I am very committed to serve the Assembly and in the same time honored that I had the opportunity to candidate. As a young member in the Romanian delegation, I am eager to learn from such challenging experience, and you allowed me to make this step. I thank you all for the already common shared experience in the frame of this assembly.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. And the position of the rapporteur is not contested either. I declare that the nominee for that position, Mr. Laurinas Kastiunas from Lithuania, is elected by acclamation. If you would like to say a few words, please.
Thank you very much for your support. You know, I am started to work in the Parliament, Lithuanian Parliament, since 2016, and I'm a member of National Security and Defense Committee. Before that, I was in think tanks. I worked in Eastern Europe Study Center, so I have some experience in national security affairs. So I hope I will be capable to do that job. So thank you once again for your support.
Congratulations again Again, congratulations to re-elected and newly elected colleagues, and wish you the successful work in future. This concludes the work of the first committee for the 28th annual session. It was my pleasure to chair this committee, and I appreciate all your contributions, and I think it was a very productive 4 days of work. I appreciate your support. And of course, I would like to thank especially the Secretariat, without whose support we wouldn't have been so efficient. And of course, thanks to our interpreters. And now I declare the 2019 annual meeting of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly's General Committee on Political Affairs and Security closed. Thank you.
Congratulations,
Gustavo, thank you so much.